This system is broken, is it not? It was different in the Ellis Island days because we weren't a welfare state. If you came here, you're going to work your ass off, and a lot of people left. We don't just need to be bringing people in based on asylum. We should be recruiting people.
I agree 100%. We need to be able to attract the best and the brightest from around the world. That's American exceptionalism.
Those that want to come to the land of opportunity, and we want to give them that opportunity. How do we get those people here? I think a question on a lot of people's mind right now is there a way to have secure borders and a fair asylum process and at the same time welcome the best talent on earth? Now, my guest is Deron Smallcomb, and he says yes. Now, Deron is an immigration attorney, a best-selling author of Securing America's Future, a blueprint for 21st century immigration reform. Now, he says the system that we have right now, which is backed up to hell and gone, wasn't built for the world that we now live in. It was built for the Cold War, and that it just flat needs to change. And I'll tell you before we even start, I agree with him, because we've got people now that are looking at 10, 12 more years trying to get a date with an immigration court to come in legally. And Deron, thank you for being here to talk about this.
Happy to be here, Dr. Phil.
You know, I've spent a lot of time with the president on this. I've spent a lot of time with Tom Homan, the border czar, on this. And I can tell you from Tom's point of view, he's saying, look, I'm going to enforce the law, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you tell me I need to give them a big hug and a ride somewhere, I'll do that. But right now, the law is that they need to come through a portal and do this in a known, well-defined process. And if they don't do that, they're violating the law and they're here illegally.
They enacted the laws that ICE enforce. ICE isn't making this up. They're enforcing laws passed by Congress, and they're funded to enforce.
He said, it's not my job to interpret the law, it's my job to enforce the law, and until you tell me different, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to opine about what his opinion is about the law. He just says I need to enforce the law as it is. But this system is broken, is it not?
It's absolutely broken. I mean, Dr. Phil, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, we have to appreciate that immigration is a necessary aspect of American life, because for nearly 60 years, we have not hit a replacement birth rate. And if we don't have enough children in this country, we need to bring people in that are younger to do the jobs, to pay the Social Security, to make sure our systems don't collapse.
Well, we're at about a 1.6 birth rate right now. We need at least 2.1 to support the infrastructure we need going forward.
Absolutely.
And we don't have that. We're not the worst in the world, but we're down below where we need to be. As you say, we need immigration. We need it for birth rate. We need it for talent. We need it for a lot of different reasons. That's how we got to where we are, is through immigration, right?
Absolutely.
Let me be very clear. I'm a huge proponent of immigration, but I think about America as my home. This is my home. I'm one of those people that's proud to be an American. I can opine forever on what I think it means to be an American and why I'm proud to be an American. I love this country. I love it enough to admit what's wrong with it. I'm not so defensive about it, I can't admit what's wrong with it. And because I think of it as my home, I want to know who's coming in my home.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily need to decide who gets in and who doesn't, but I wouldn't let anybody in my front door if I didn't know who they were. And I think our gatekeepers need to know who's coming in. Is that an unreasonable position?
It's not unreasonable. And the thing is, it's very difficult to vet some of the people that are coming in from the countries in which they're coming. It's very easy to buy a police certificate, say in Eritrea, that says that you've never done anything wrong. Give $10 to the policeman and you're going to get what you need. Then when you come to the border, you say, you know, I have no criminal history, I'm a good guy. And how do you vet somebody like that when they're coming in? It's very difficult.
Well, it is, and there are some things you can look at. I mean, if they're all tatted up from known gang tats in that country, but if they come from Venezuela, for example, they got smart and they don't do a lot of gang tats and stuff, so they're not easy to spot. But you can at least get information on them when they come in. You can have some identifying information that you can put in the system. So if they do commit a crime once they're here, if they're in the system, you can identify them. There are things you can do on the front end. So if they do something on the back end, they're easier to find and prosecute.
Certainly. And one of the main things that you have to do is you have to vet people in that they qualify for asylum. So what we're talking about now really are people coming in seeking the protection of the United States, coming to the southern border, requesting entry because maybe they're being persecuted based on their race or religion or their nationality or political opinion or something else they can't control. And these people need to be vetted on the spot for their story as well. Not just, my life is tough here because I can't make enough money, or I don't like the way the government is, or something like that. It has to be real persecution before somebody is granted asylum in this country. And that process needs to happen sooner than the court system, which is generally taking several years in many cases to even process these people.
Why is that? Why is it so backlogged?
Well, number one, it's overwhelmed and it's very cumbersome process. So what we should have is something at the border where people are truly screened and given a hearing, a fair hearing within 24 to 48 hours to whether they are likely to succeed on an asylum claim. Let's say in the last administration, you're here on time, you set an appointment, I see that your pictures match up in your passport. Do you have somewhere to go? Yes. All right, have a nice day, here's a work permit. Well, that is overwhelming the system. So where I had people that have legitimate cases that are likely to win on the merits of their case, now millions of people have kind of jumped the line and backlogged that system when there's just hundreds of immigration judges. It's not thousands or tens of thousands out there processing. There's hundreds for these millions of people, and that's a real problem.
Okay, but look, we're not idiots. Somebody can look at that and say, okay, we have hundreds of immigration judges, 11.3 million total pending applications, which is the highest in history. So you got 100 judges. You could put them in this room, and you've got 11.3 million people. That's more than live in all 5 boroughs of New York City. And the judges to process them, you could fit in this room. Now, Lassie could figure out that doesn't work. What's the problem? Why do we not fix that in terms of getting tens of thousands of immigration judges to clear this issue? They're talking about getting 84,000 more IRS agents. Why would you do that when you need immigration judges?
The reality is actually they're letting immigration judges go. Last week, they just fired several in New York because their approval rates were too high. There should be a standard, right? So right now, if you're applying for asylum nationally, if your case gets heard and you actually pursue it all the way to the end, about 35% are gonna win their case. Now, many are gonna abandon it, many are gonna never show up, so those don't count in that calculation. When you have cases that are strong, like the ones that our law firm takes, for example, we're winning 80–90% of those cases because the cases are strong. They meet all the qualifications, they're here for the right reasons. And many of these are from the former Soviet Union, which what asylum was designed to help, were people that were defecting from that part of the world. But the other people, they're not going to win the case. So you could hire more immigration judges. That's certainly the Band-Aid solution right now. But we have to make it so that the flow of people seeking asylum is curtailed at a level that's manageable from the beginning. And that is what I like to call a 21st century Ellis Island at the border itself. You go, you have an area where your case is heard, you present your evidence, and a judge or an immigration officer says, okay, this person is likely to succeed or this person's not likely to succeed.
I've got another question, and I think maybe this is going to take us down a different path, and I need you to educate me on this. And I want to stay out of the politics of this because this is a bipartisan challenge. It's both a problem and an opportunity, really. And we don't just need to be bringing people in based on asylum. We should be recruiting people to come to this country, right?
I agree 100%. Dr. Phil, we need to have at least a 2-tiered approach here. We need to be able to attract the best and the brightest from around the world. That's American exceptionalism that we need to continue to promote. Like you, I'm a very proud American. I want all the best people in the world to be here. Simultaneously, the people that are some of the weakest in the world that want to just practice their religion freely, that have nowhere else to turn, we should also be that as well. I mean, that's part of our common heritage and culture. And I believe that we could achieve both of these simultaneously. They're not at conflict with one another.
No, not at all. And so if there are people that are seeking asylum, I got that. That's one category. But then there are people that just want to come here. And look, it was different in the Ellis Island days because we weren't a welfare state then. If you came here, you're going to work your ass off. And a lot of people left because they found it hard to make it here. But now it's a welfare state, and so people can come here, and if they came into contact with a federal immigration officer, they got plane tickets and money and all kinds of benefits. Whereas if they ran into a state immigration officer, they got a bus ride back across the bridge and they were out of here. So they'd run towards a green uniform and away from a brown uniform.
Sure.
But if we have people that are coming here that have skills, they're great stonemasons and painters and computer coders and analysts and, as I say, artisans on up to highly skilled people that we may have trained that then left after their student visas expired. We don't want those people going somewhere else. We're in a global economy now, right? So we want to have a way, not for just those seeking asylum, but those that want to come to the land of opportunity, and we want to give them that opportunity. How do we get those people here?
Very difficult. Let me tell you, a great example is what we did called a National Interest Waiver visa, which is basically a green card in this case.
Okay.
This means that it's in the interest of the United States to have this person here. It's a very narrow category. It's one of the only categories where somebody with talent could apply for themselves. No sponsor. It's like, you need me, United States, and here's why. So we did one of these recently. This petition was over this high, Dr. Phil. It was thousands of pages. It won't even fit in a standard box that's issued by U.S. Postal Service. It's unbelievable. It took an attorney, not just a team, but an attorney, over 200 hours to prepare this petition. We're going to send it in. This paper now has to be reviewed by an immigration officer, right? Now, people sometimes are a little bit lazy. They don't want to go through 1,000 pages or more. I don't blame them, right? They're going to send us back a request for more evidence, even if we provided it, because it just gives them more time to look through it.
Yeah.
We're going to have to reply again with hundreds of pages of evidence and clarifying where they shouldn't have asked for it, for example. And maybe sometime in the next 6 or 12 months, they'll make a decision on this petition. This is the cumbersome aspect of getting people that are in the national interest of the United States to actually come here and stay here. It's an unbelievably difficult system that needs to be changed.
Now, I know that there was a period of many years that I had some immigrants working for me that had PhDs in different disciplines, and I filled out paperwork that said, this is a very specialized individual. It was when I was in the trial science business, working in the court systems, and I had trained these people. They came with PhDs, but then I trained them specifically in jury selection, witness preparation, trial analysis, things of that nature. And I've advertised for people that have these credentials. They don't exist. This is a one-of-one individual, and I can't replace them with a U.S. citizen. So I need this individual, and I prepared that paperwork, signed those letters, and they were able to stay because I couldn't replace them domestically. And they still had to go back to their point of entry every 2 years with that paperwork to get renewed and stay. Is that still possible? Does that still happen?
But it's even worse now. So now there's quotas based on what each country could do each year, and there's certain requirements for certain countries like China, India, Mexico, Philippines.
These were Iranians.
So this was Iranian. So they'll be in the standard category, and the odds of you being successful on it are slim, but it's possible. And once they get here, if they want to stay here eventually, then they're going to apply for a green card. Now, maybe from Iran, there's an allocation of about 7,000 green cards per year that are available to Iranian citizens and other countries throughout the world. That same exact allocation is also available to India, which has 1.6 billion people and is one of our main partners in immigration for tech. So an Indian person not only would it take a year or two, like maybe an Iranian person, it will actually take about 12 or 13 years to get approved for the visa just to come. And when they want to apply for a green card, it is unlikely to happen in their lifetime.
And see, I wasn't making this up. It would have taken me 2 or 3 years. This was a UC Berkeley grad. They came over to that education, then I trained them up specifically. It would have taken me forever to get somebody back up to that level of expertise. That's what I don't want to see happen, is somebody that has individuals that are highly skilled and really well educated and intelligent that we lose to somewhere else. And that's what's happening now, I fear. These people are going to Canada, Australia, England, other places that we need here.
It's because we don't have a merit-based immigration system, and that's what we're sorely lacking in this country.
Okay, the merit-based system doesn't mean only rich people. It means asking, what can you contribute? What skills do you bring? Talk about the merit-based system. How can we make this work?
So Canada and Australia have put together great systems where there's a point-based system, right? So you could actually go online and fill out a petition. Do you speak English? Yes. Do you come from a country that has similar values as the United States, for example? What's your education in? What's your job? Do you have any savings? Do you have a family? And it's going to go through all of these different type of criteria, which are generally objective criteria, and just say, okay, at the end of this questionnaire, how many points did you get? You know, and now maybe somebody from, let's say, England. You're an engineer, you're married with a couple of kids, you've got savings to take care of yourself, you're not going to be a burden on the taxpayer, you have a transportable degree that immediately you could add value to the United States. For this person, as it stands today, the odds of them being able to move to the United States because that's their dream, I wouldn't say it's negligible, but it's a very, very small chance of that happening. With a merit-based system, this person would go ahead and fill out this form, and we would assess their qualifications, if you will, and make a decision as to whether we want them to come over and participate in the American dream. And we don't have that now, and we must have that if we're going to be competitive in the 21st century.
I know some guys these guys are carpenters and painters. I talk about them in my book. We've got issues that are here. They're legal. It took them a long time, but they wouldn't have had much to check on those boxes because they're self-trained. Let me tell you, these guys, if you wanted a wooden car, they could make you a wooden car. I mean, these are craftsmen, artisans that are the best finished carpenters you could imagine, cabinet makers, and that sort of thing. And as the baby boomers age out, not an issue for you, but being a baby boomer, we're going to have hundreds of thousands of carpenter, electrical, plumbers, all of these tradesmen jobs. We're going to have hundreds of thousands of empty jobs because the current generation doesn't want to do those jobs, but there are great craftsmen that can and will do those jobs. How would they get in under a merit system?
I don't see any reason why they couldn't be included in the merit system, and particularly for the skills that we need. Like, so for example, I was in California at our office a couple weeks back, and I have a cousin who's a plumber there. And he was telling me that for the construction that's happening in California now, they're actually having to import from other states the craftsmen to finish the homes, right? They don't actually have the people there. They've moved. They don't have them anymore. And so there's nothing wrong with saying in the merit-based system that these are the skills that we desire, and you could adjust this every year. Congress can make changes, or the Immigration Service can make changes saying, hey, right now our preference is on tradesmen. This is what we need, going forward. And this is where we need them. So it's like, okay, we will let you come over here and you can have a green card after 2 years, but for those 2 years, we need you to live in this area and use your skills in this area because that is an area that we want to focus on, whether it's a major urban center or whether maybe it's an area that needs economic development. Let's have it focused there because that benefits Americans that are already there to have these people. And there's nothing that stops us from doing that.
And what a great opportunity for them.
Absolutely.
They come and fill a need and demonstrate their citizenship. By that I mean that they're good citizens, they contribute, they pay their taxes, they don't commit crimes. We may not know much from the country they came from, but they create a new history here, and we can see that they've done well. Their kids are in school, they're doing the things they need to do. So now they've created a history that we can vet, because with the passage of time, you don't have to speculate, you can measure. And we can see they have done the kind of job that we would want to have done here.
And it fits within the scheme that we have. Like, so for example, I don't talk about it that often, but there's an immigration story in my family with my wife when we met 20 years ago or so. And we went through the legal process and she came over legally, and then we had to apply for the green card after we married. But the first green card is only a 2-year conditional green card. It's conditioned upon you being an asset, not committing crimes, staying married to the same person, keeping your word, and living the American life. And then after 2 years, you could remove these conditions. So there's these steps along the way, 4 in fact, before citizenship, that you need to meet before you could actually fully integrate into the United States. And there's nothing stopping us from doing that. In fact, we already know how to do it.
And with these jobs that we're going to have open, we need to attract that kind of worker. And I think a big question now is, and I'm hoping you've got some ideas about this, because the crisis has now moved inland from the border, because the border is under control at this point. We're not having this giant influx. Would you agree with that?
I agree. The border's closed. We don't get anybody coming in hardly at all anymore.
Okay, but now we do have, depending on who you talk to, double-digit millions that came across illegally and are in America at this point. Some of them have dates that they got when they crossed over. Some of them don't. They're just here. But we have double-digit millions that are in the country illegally. And the question that I'm going to have for you is, how do we unfurl all of that? How do we get them into the system in a way that they're not living in fear every day? They don't have this sword hanging over their heads, so to speak, and we unclog the system. What do we do with all of these people? So if we have violent criminals, they're trying to identify and get them in custody and out of the country if possible. But most of those that are here, and I've met not thousands probably personally, but hundreds, seem to me like good folks, really just looking for a better life. I mean, most of them didn't seem to me like they were fleeing some horrible regime. They were looking for a better life for themselves and their family. And I have to say, as a father and a grandfather, if I was in some of the countries they were in, I'd be looking for a better track to run on. So they're here, and they're clogging up the system, the ones that have dates and the others that are just here. What do we do with all of these people, most of whom, I think most people would agree, are not threats to public safety? They're just here. They're not here legally, but they're here. What do we do with them?
In my mind, I categorize people that came, let's say, more than 5 years ago and are continuing to work, contribute to society, not getting in trouble, raising a family. To me, these are the lowest priority of enforcement that we should be looking at. Then I look at the people that came in the previous administration, lots of military-age males that didn't show up for court and that haven't pursued a process. I look at these as a different category. And then the final category is anybody that committed a crime, right? Anybody that committed a crime, you're on the radar. And if you've done nothing to create a legal situation for yourself, that's where enforcement needs to happen. But enforcement's not happening because there is a reason for that in 3 states in particular that are populous states: in California, Illinois, and New York. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is not what everybody thinks it is. Everybody thinks we're getting them here to vote or something like that. They're no ID voting states, things like that. These states are sanctuary states, and they're not turning over people. And the reason they're not doing it is because there is a census at least once every 10 years. The census determines how many electoral college votes you're going to get and how many congressional representatives you're going to get. California, Illinois, and New York have all lost population since COVID. Myself being one of them. I moved from California to Texas, but somebody had to replace me. In New York, in this last census, they lost 2 votes for the Electoral College and 2 congressional representatives. That went to Texas and Florida. That starts to shift the balance of power. And this is why we're seeing resistance, especially when it comes to turning over people, even criminals in these states. And the resistance to ICE coming in and doing the enforcement is purely based on numbers. The census isn't based on how many citizens live in a state, it's how many people live in a state. Trump challenged it in his last term, but it didn't go through. This is why, from the right side, you're seeing this enforcement happening so much in these 3 states in particular, is because they want to get the people out. And what I'm seeing, unfortunately, is that some people are getting caught up in the enforcement that shouldn't be. So when you don't release the guy that just got a DUI that came here 2 years ago that isn't contributed anything, and you don't get him from the jail, you got to go to his house. Now, when you go to his house, grandma's there and the kids are there. And what are you going to do? Your hands are tied. You have to take them too.
You got to take the collaterals.
And it's horrible because, nobody wants to see Abuela get picked up. Nobody wants to see that. But we do want to see the criminal get picked up. So how do we get to that point? That I don't know. It's going to take continued enforcement, and there's going to be continued resistance. And that's how it's going to play out, unfortunately, I think.
If you ignore those that have been here for 5 years, even though they've got a good track record, you are rewarding bad behavior. You're letting those people jump the line, and the people that are standing in line, that are respecting the law and doing it the right way, they're being penalized.
Yeah.
And these people that cheated and swam the river, came across whatever, however they got here, you're saying, well, okay, you're lower priority now. But the real low priority are the people that are stuck in line because illegal immigration has jammed up legal immigration. If you took out all of the phony asylum seekers, you wouldn't be jammed up. How do we unravel that?
That's a tough one. And let me give you a great example. We had an asylum case. Somebody came into the country legally, and they claimed asylum while they were here from Eastern Europe. And they had good reason. It's almost certain to be a successful case. We filed that case in 2015. It finally came to an interview this summer, 10 years later, okay? Now, the system is so clogged, they haven't made a decision on it now, 6 months later. And now they've decided with these 19 countries or so that are on the visa ban and where they're gonna review all these green cards, that nobody gets an asylum decision now until we've gotten through this problem dealing with people that have fraudulently applied for green cards. So in my estimation now, this person who's been in limbo for over a decade is gonna continue to be in limbo for years because the people that are abusing the system are jumping in front of and being prioritized over people that are trying to legally navigate the system. And it's very frustrating. There's no process we do anymore that takes less than a year. None. It used to be that way, not anymore. Now, the fastest process you could expect would be about 2 years. That's it. And that's very frustrating for people that are trying to do it right.
Particularly if they do have an issue. I mean, if they really do have an issue where they're at risk, what do they do for 2 years?
They struggle is what they do, and when you can't get a work permit during that time too, and it's because so many people have abused the work permit process. During Biden, they would let you in and give you a work permit basically on the spot. So you had no incentive to actually pursue anything. You got a 4-year work permit the moment you walked in. Now, some of these other processes, you don't get a work permit. So you sit there and struggle and you wait and you just, every day you wake up and it's in the back of your mind, and it's not a good way to live. And it's not reflective on the excellence that we have here in America.
No, because what happens is they work off the books.
They do.
These unscrupulous employers put them to work in some way, and then they hold back some of their pay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're extorting them. And I mean, I've talked to some of them that say, I go to work and they don't pay me much, and then my foreman takes a part of that. And so some of them are working for maybe $4 or $5 an hour when otherwise they would be getting 15.
Sure.
I really wonder what would happen if we went to, say, all of the agricultural workers, for example, and just said, okay, nobody run, nobody scatter. We're going to give you a work permit for the 6 months that you need to be working, and you can go back and forth while you have it, and then when you're out of season, you go back home. When you're in season, you can come back here. But it would keep them from getting exploited. It would allow us to put them on the books. It would allow us to track them and see who winds up getting in trouble and who doesn't, and start to vet these people and build a history on them. It would keep from getting them away from their families, because some of them come up here and send the money back home, but they don't get to go home for 6 or 7 months. It would seem like we could take care of millions of people if we gave them a pass where they could come and go during season. The farmers need them, they need the work, and they could still reside in Mexico, for example, but come back and forth. It just seems like there could be some ways to negotiate this out with some of these different populations in a way that's not caving the system, but adapting the system.
You need incentive for good behavior. So right now they're away from their family for 6 months to work and pay taxes, and that's great. They're a net benefit to us for jobs that we need that aren't filled by Americans, but then they go back. So the incentive for them to stay would be like, okay, well, I'm just going to stay because life's better here. I'm going to get my family over here somehow, and we're going to stay. So they may engage in illegal behavior to do that. Now, what if after somebody did this 3 or 4 seasons, you opened up the possibility of getting a green card and bringing their family?
That's what I'm saying. By then you'd know if these are bad actors or not.
Exactly.
You build a history. One of my theories is that we've made a mistake of putting non-problem solvers in a position of solving problems. And that the main priority of the people in DC and in state capitals is their number one job is to get reelected. And I think sometimes they think, well, if I solve the problem, there won't be anything left to do. There's plenty to do. Don't worry about it. Solve a problem, we'll have another one for you to do. You feel like this is politically driven because of head count, not registered voters, just pure head count based on census. It can actually shift the balance of power going forward.
It will undoubtedly shift the balance of power. If, for example, our next census was citizens only or citizens and permanent residents, the balance of power would shift for decades, not just temporarily. We wouldn't have a split Congress anymore. It would be like 55-45 or 60-40, because these huge population coastal states like California, New York, and also Illinois have such a huge voting bloc because of the raw numbers in the state. If you took that away, then a whole country looks different. The whole country turns red, essentially, for a long period of time.
So you think there's enough immigrant population in New York, California, and Illinois that it shifts the balance to the point that it would change congressional alignment?
Absolutely. Even a small shift, even if it's less than we think. You mentioned there's double-digit millions that came over the last administration. And I can tell you, many of our clients are in those 3 states. It's just better for them. They get some benefits, maybe their health care is provided or whatever it may be. This is where they choose to be. If you had a small shift away from that, then the Rust Belt no longer factors into the presidential elections. It's no longer the deciding factor. You'd actually be able to lose it and still perhaps win the presidential election. That's a major shift.
That is.
And this is the primary barrier. Like, a lot of people talk about immigrants voting that aren't supposed to. It happens, okay? It doesn't happen to where it's shifting elections one way or another. It's on a pretty small scale, as far as I could tell. I've seen it from the other side where people have admitted to doing it, and I can't take them as clients because I can no longer represent that they haven't done that, and that's a problem. But this is what the primary barrier for us, from the way you described our politicians as being in power but not representing our interests. Who doesn't want the best and brightest to come here? Who doesn't want to protect the weak? Who doesn't want to have a seasonal program that works for Americans and helps the farmers and everything else? These are common sense. There's nobody that could say they wouldn't want that. But if you shift to that policy, then the balance of power starts to shift.
All right, well, I got a hard question for you before we wrap up here. If you were king of the forest, what would be the 3 things you would change?
I would create a merit-based system right now. And if I were advising the president, I'd say keep up with the enforcement, but we have to bring people into the ones that we want, right? That would be number 1. And a merit-based system is fair, and it allows people from all over the world to make their application to live the American dream. And I can't think of anything more American than that, or that benefits the American people more than that. That's number 1. Number 2, I would create a guest worker program that's a little more robust than what we have, with a path to citizenship for all those that respect the system and contribute to our economy. Third, I would create a system that allows people to come to the border, the people that are seeking asylum, and be vetted then and there as to whether their case would be successful or not, to make a good decision, even to have a appeal. When you do that, then you're only allowing the people to come into the country that have the strongest cases, that are likely to prevail on the merits of their case. This allows us to help the people that we want to help, but it doesn't bring in millions and millions of people that are unvetted. We'll never get out the people that came in the last administration. It's numerically impossible, right? So we can never be in that situation again.
That just makes all the sense in the world. It really does. You know, we're out of time. I hope we can talk again. I want to thank my guest, Deron Smallcomb, author of Securing America's Future, a blueprint for 21st century immigration reform. And I want to thank you for joining us. You know, I've got a new channel called Envoy Fast. It's free 24/7 and available on Samsung TV Plus, Local Now, and Vita televisions. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.